Hey everyone, Gameboy Felix from Nintendo Life here, and would you believe it, Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games are now on Nintendo Switch. But which game is the best? Which game is the worst? Currently there are 15 games on these two services, and we'll be ranking them all. First the Game Boy games, and then the Game Boy Advance games. And do keep in mind that this ranking wasn't made by us, but our lovely Nintendo Life readers over at our website. So without further ado, let's go. So starting out with the 9 Game Boy games, hey, cut that Game Boy voice effect off, that's gonna get really old really fast. Let's just save it for the outro or something, okay?
Yeah, that's much better. Oh, and these words were written by Gavin and the rest of the wonderful Nintendo Life staff. Wait, where were we? Oh yeah, the game ranked on 9th place. Alone in the Dark, the New Nightmare for the Game Boy Color. This one was a cross-platform title that also had PlayStation, PC and Dreamcast versions, and although the handheld probably wasn't the most ideal platform for an immersive Resident Evil-inspired survival horror experience, developer Pocket Studio did an admirable job downscaling the pre-rendered environments to display on Game Boy Color, delivering a decent approximation of the game as it existed on far more powerful systems. That's not to say that Game Boy Color's Alone in the Dark The New Nightmare is the pick of the ports, of course, but as massively downscaled 8-bit remakes go, it's really not a bad one and can be impressively spooky given the platform's limitations. And ranking on 8th place we have Metroid 2 Return of Samus for the Game Boy. Metroid 2 Return of Samus expands on the original NES title nicely. There is still no map for the game's giant world, which isn't necessarily a problem due to the game's linearity, although it can be an issue if you put the game down for a while and don't remember where you got to. There is a decent amount of exploration and hidden items to find, and the hunt to locate and kill the 39 Metroids is fairly fun. Although nowhere near as refined as the 2D masterpiece that is Super Metroid, Metroid 2 has held up better than the original NES game and as such is still very much worth playing. Of course, the 3DS remake is arguably the best way to play the first Return of Samus these days, but the original still has a lo-fi charm of its own. And then going further to the 7th place, we have Game & Watch Gallery 3 for the Game Boy Color. So this game mostly sticks to the formula of its predecessors, and it does a fine job of offering up some simple handheld gaming classics in a more convenient form, with a larger number of games and a good varied selections to boot. There are a lot of things to unlock for those willing to put the time in, and if you manage to get everything, you can always revisit any of the titles to improve your scores. Definitely worth a look if you're a Game & Watch fan. Next up on our list, on 6th place, we have Kirby's Dream Land for the Game Boy. Kirby's Dream Land was and remains an exceptionally charming platformer, although you might find that the Pink Puff's debut Game Boy adventure feels a little too elementary these days. Many years worth of nostalgia give us huge affection for Kirby, but looking over the top of those rose-tinted glasses for a moment reveals a slightly pedestrian title carried by that charm, a game outpaced by its descendants in virtually every way. That's not to say that this game isn't worth your time. Even though the copy abilities is not there yet, it is still a brilliant platformer. But it's just to say that the irresistible puffball has done better since, naturally. And next up on the list, on 5th place, is Gargoyle's Quest for the Game Boy. Beautiful in its simplicity, satisfying in its depth, and assured in execution, Gargoyle's Quest is one of the best games on the system, and a solid indication on how potent a gaming platform the Game Boy was for its time. Technically a Ghost and Goblins game, it actually plays much more like The Adventure of Link, with top-down overworld gameplay given way to side-on platforming battles. This is a truly timeless release that should be experienced by gamers of all ages. And going along with the list, we have Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins for the Game Boy. The original Super Mario Land was a solid start for the series on Nintendo's Game Boy system, but nothing could prepare gamers for what the developers were able to do with the sequel. They managed to improve every aspect of the game and made the adventure a much longer and more rewarding experience this time around. The difficulty is a bit on the easy side, but it's still one of the best Game Boy titles ever released and a testament to just how capable a game system the Game Boy truly was in hands of talented devs. If you're a Super Mario fan, you absolutely must play this game. If not, this legendary release is good enough to make you one at least. And going into the top 3 of Game Boy games on NSO, we have Wario Land 3 for the Game Boy Color. Like Wario Land 2 before it, Wario Land 3 is in some ways more of a puzzle game than an action game, and it's essential to know going in that this is a very different form of a standard Mario platformer. The Wario concept was refined further in this third entry, with a ton of stages and different paths, making it easily the biggest Wario Land in terms of scope. If you enjoyed the previous adventure, then this generously expanded outing is likely to please you even more. If this is your first Wario Land, you absolutely must try it. And if the previous one wasn't your cup of tea...
Wow, what are you saying? Of course it's your cup of tea. Wario Land games...
Whoa, sorry about that. Why don't we move on to the next game? And missing out with 0.1 points of the first place, we have The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening DX. Link's Awakening is a game of contrasts, sadness and joy, bleakness and whimsy, dream and reality, confusion and comfort. Its success lies in the ability to balance these contradictory elements with tight, compelling gameplay and a timeless presentation. The extra dungeon and other features of this DX version doesn't add up to a huge amount over the original monochromatic release, but it's still a mighty fine game enhanced by the upgraded console's color palette. Grezzo's Switch remake might have prettified this game, but the quirky characters, melancholy and beauty of Link's first portable adventure were there right from the very beginning. If you own a Game Boy Color or have any other way to access it, like a Nintendo Switch, this game is essential. And in first place we have the original Tetris for the Game Boy, coming out on top with, again like I said before, 0.1 point. This was a very close race between Tetris and Link's Awakening DX. With a few bells and whistles that would arrive later on, Game Boy Tetris is arguably the purest expression of the original block falling idea. There have been countless ports of this addictive puzzle made available for just about every electronic device in existence, but the Game Boy version is arguably the most beloved. And its clear visuals, responsive controls, and that theme tune make it easy to appreciate why. No self-respecting Game Boy enthusiast should be without a copy. And that was our final ranking of the Game Boy games on NSO, and we'll now be moving on to the Game Boy Advance games. We have 6 games to rank here, and starting off, it's Mario Kart Super Circuit. Returning to the flat tracks and tight power sliding gameplay of the original Super Mario Kart, the Game Boy Advance was capable of replicating SNES-like performance. It certainly wasn't up to the tech standard of the Nintendo 64 or GameCube, but Mario Kart Super Circuit ended up feeling like the Super Mario Kart sequel we never got on Nintendo's 16-bit console. Sure, the visuals has arguably aged worse than the SNES version, but this pint-sized speedfest packs in plenty of content. The fun foundation was there at the very beginning of the series, and it's definitely present in the GBA entry. While the 3DS Ambassador and Wii U Virtual Console re-releases lack the multiplayer features of the original, the Nintendo Switch Online version thankfully rectifies that situation if multiplayer is your thing, which with Mario Kart, it really should be. No need for link cables these days, Super Circuit still holds up well and serves as a great, successor to the SNES original, if that's your favorite Mario Kart flavor. And ranking 5th on the Game Boy Advance NSO list, we have Kuru Kuru Kururin. This GBA launch title may start off a little too easy, but that's about all the fault you can find with it. It won't take you long to clear every level, but doing it without error is a challenge, as you guide a big old constantly rotating stick around tricky, colorful courses. With plenty of environmental variety and some terrific music, there's a lot of enjoyment from simply improving your times on the various courses. Kuru Kuru Kurin is one of the GBA's most delightful treats and perfect for portable play. A brilliantly fun little game that's a bit different from the norm. And going along with the list, we have WarioWare Inc. Mega Microgame. The microgames on offer in this WarioWare game may be simple affairs, but the frantic, fast-paced and challenging experience that results from knitting them together in quick succession is incredibly addictive, and Wario's patented brand of mania is well suited to a handheld. It isn't the longest game, and beyond the single-player mode, there isn't much else to do, but it's stuffed full of magical creative moments, not to mention an abundance of classic Nintendo nostalgia and charm. And going into the top 3 of the Game Boy Advance games on NSO, we have Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga. Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga's lengthy main adventure felt pretty unique back in 2003. It was only the third RPG-style Mario adventure, but developer Alpha Dream's Mario debut hit the jackpot right away with its addictive battle systems and dual brother gameplay. With plenty of side quests to seek out and minigames to replay for high scores, Mario & Luigi's amusing animations and voice acting played into the game's great sense of humor, and it hasn't lost its ability to raise an ear-to-ear smile. And ranking second, we have Super Mario Advance 4 Super Mario Bros. 3. This game made navigating this series' obtuse naming conventions absolutely worth it, even if you played Super Mario Bros. 3 on NES, which of course you did. Assuming you had the requisite kit to access the e-reader levels, many of which were never released in North America, Super Mario Advance 4 contained a bevy of fresh Nintendo-designed levels to play through, making it an essential for the Mario connoisseur. Aside from the extra levels, this feels like playing the version of Super Mario Bros. 3 from Super Mario All-Stars but on handheld. Whether you are an NES purist or you prefer the updated look and feel of the SNES version, Super Mario Bros. 3 shines brightly in any form. And ranking numero uno, we have The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap. This game carried on the trend of giving Link a talking piece of equipment to accompany him on his quest. This time around it was the Minish Cap, a hat named Eslo that could shrink Link to microscopic proportions so he could locate the Kinstone fragments and save the Minish people, or Picori. Another flagship developed entry after the company proved itself with the excellent Oracle pair Ages and Seasons, this was a traditional Zelda adventure that still looks and sounds wonderful, even if it didn't do an awful lot to shake up the formula. It introduced a few new items though, and allowed Link to learn new sword techniques throughout the game, as well as gain the ability to fuse elements to his sword. All in all, just a brilliantly bite-sized adventure to cap off this list.
And that was every Game Boy game on NSO so far ranked. Do you agree with our list? Let us know how you would rank the Game Boy games on Switch down in the comments below. And that was everything from me. Stay safe, play some Game Boy games now on Nintendo Switch, and I'll see you in the next one. Gameboy Felix from Nintendo Life, out.